welcome back to another episode of Hand Tool Rescue. Today's a very special episode because I have COVID while doing the narration, so if I sound weird, blame the virus. Anyways, today we have a glorious Type 1 Stanley number 113 compass plane. These were made very specifically from 1877 to 1880. So one of the older tools I've done on this channel. I haven't done a hand plane in a while. I miss it. I always love hand planes. It's just something that I will endlessly enjoy, and I just love using them afterwards. So I decided to take this opportunity to restore this moderately uncommon and rare type of plane that a viewer sent to me so graciously. Now, unfortunately, this is one of the plane restorations where you have to actually damage or at least drill out one single pin in order to get the super ornate and fancy knob off and enable kind of the rest of the restoration. So if you're planning on doing this yourself, you don't have to do this. It's just something that I have to do in order to do the restoration because I would like to give this plane a fresh and glorious new coat of Japanning. Now, the Japanning on this plane is incredibly thin and barely on there. I don't know why that's the case. It might just be this specific plane, or it might be all of the planes of this exact model. I'm not sure, but I'm going to give it a nice thick coat of Japanning so it can stay glorious for years and years to come. The disassembly is obviously very straightforward and less complicated than what I'm usually doing in here. It's way less parts than usual. But what's interesting is the entire flexible sole is dovetailed into the cast body. So take care when messing around with that you're not, flexing it and breaking it in some specific direction. Now, this plane, being a compass plane, as they call it, is meant to plane concave or convex surfaces. Someone, maybe like a shipwright, would use this more often than somebody else, but anybody who needs to plane a curve down would, I guess, own or use this plane. Nothing massively fancy, but obviously that scenario is not as common as just your normal flattening bench planes. Now, after a few hours in the magical juice, it's coming out almost too glorious. I was so amazingly happy at how this turned out because I was worried that there'd be such a level of pitting that if I'm wire wheeling pitting, it doesn't really look good, and I need this to get back to original. So I'm very happy to see that, and you can see as I'm wire wheeling this gloriously thin and flexible sole, which usually is murdered by rust, because it's so thin. It would still function just fine, but aesthetically, I'm going for a very sexy hand plane here. It's glorious. It's too good. And the cutter is emerging with its glorious stamp of a March 20th, 1877 patent date on it. It's just... And for once, the Japanning's so thin, I can actually just wire wheel it off, which is not common. Usually it's tougher than that. And because it's Japanning, paint stripper won't really work on it. So I breathe aggressively and start sandblasting it off. It's really the only effective method. Some Japanning recipes will react with paint stripper, but in my little testing, this one didn't seem to. I find it interesting too that some Stanley hand planes will react to the same paint stripper and some won't, meaning that they change the recipe at some point, which would be a really cool thing to discover and figure out, but that's beyond my pay grade at the moment. Now, these gloriously ornate knobs are, to me, what make this plane so special. It only occurred in the Type 1 plane, but I am going to polish them up to maximum, and then I will nickel plate them back as they were when they were on the shelves, which obviously kind of takes away from that fancy, nice polish, but it's just the way it is, okay? Oh, look at that. Look at that juice. So I specifically only use Gatorade for my nickel plating solution, obviously, and I keep it as dirty as humanly possible for the just nicest nickel plating. It does seem to work. I know the grossness is going to be blasphemous to all the nickel plating experts, and I'm sorry. It's just a bunch of stuff got stuck in it. What do you do? Filter it? God. Now, the only part that was broken, and I definitely did not break this, is the little pin that was inside the front knob. Now, I'm going to heat it up and kind of wrap it around the original pin size and then braze it together as kind of quickly and delicately as I can, and I'll drill it out. So nice. So I'll just loosely drill it out. It's just a pin. It's nothing that, needs to be machined, obviously. This even looks like it was hand filed originally, so might as well give it the hand filed look. And the brazing filled in all the way. It's glorious. Now the Japanning came out beautifully. I spent hours off camera scraping away any Japanning overflow from surfaces where it shouldn't be, because you can't use paint stripper once again, and therefore physical removal with sandpaper and razors is the only way to get any overpaint or over Japan out of the way. Now we sharpen the blade up to like 1 trillion bajillion infinity grit, and then I just proceed to cut myself. Just kidding. Aggressively, with the sharpest of the sharp. Always do the hair test. And I also flatten the cap iron to make sure, any shavings aren't sliding under the cap iron, increasing chatter and decreasing performance. So that's how you do it. And then you slide the cap iron as close to the edge of the blade as humanly possible and screw it down. Off camera, I did polish up the fasteners just a bit. Not super polished, but kind of like a sandpapery polish. Trying to use as much of my brass punching tools as I can to not damage anything here. And then I've kept everything lightly oiled as I reassemble here. Because once this is together, it's really not coming apart again. Unless someone as adventurous as me decides to rip it apart again. Now, if you haven't noticed, nothing is sped up in this video, like usual. I just decided, since it's so short and quick of a restoration, to, slow it down a bit and just see what happens. I edited a version where it was sped up and it was actually longer than this version, so mentally deal with that. You begin to see, once cleaned up, how these little gears are actually fastened to these square shafts, and it's kind of interesting. It's kind of like a peened over toothed mating. It's very odd. Anyways, once the squares are back in the little sockets, we're pretty much good to go with that. Everything moves. I didn't bind anything, so glory, glory. Now, you need to kind of pay attention here when reassembling this, as you could mess this up and forever ruin it if you do not extend the internal threaded part that I fixed with brazing out to the proper distance. And you see me adjusting it here. So with the plain sole completely flat, you need to line this up as perfectly as possible. And the distance that that fixed part is extended out of the knob is now the correct distance, so that when you unscrew the knob or screw the knob in, the amount of flex in either direction is the same. You don't want to over flex in one direction and under flex in the other. Then I just peen this over with a concave punch that I have, and it looks great. Nobody will ever know. The frog was lightly flattened on a diamond stone. It wasn't critical. These aren't machining tools, so it's not really the end of the world. But just getting rid of kind of any massively uneven parts. That doesn't look like pitting to me. That it is pitted, but it's due to just the way it was cast and not any rust. Now we are nearing completion. The depth adjustment moves sensually, and the back handle will now be attached. Be forewarned, if you ever come across these planes, this back handle is very frequently shattered off because there's just one screw holding in a cast iron piece, which is really, really bad. And the amount of force that that takes when you push down on your hand and into the plane and wood is just too much for a lot of these planes. Not to mention, if you drop it, that's going to hit at some point too. So, poor design that was later fixed with, wow, hear this, 2 screws. And they changed a bunch of other little fine details. It's less ornate on the knobs, and the depth adjuster knob has holes in it for some reason. They just started kind of making it cheaper over time. Now I'm just going with a piece of spruce here to kind of test the plane out and get some nice shavings. The shavings are coming in super thin, so it's driving me nuts. So I got a little more deep. You can hear the sound change. We got thicker strips coming off, and I adjust the concavity of the plane into this exact angle, and that's it. Now the plane conforms to that whether you want it to or not, and once it kind of stops planing anything, you know you've reached that exact curvature. And it goes the other way, of course. You turn the knob the other way. This was a little more difficult to plane because you kind of can't plane into end grain material, so you have to start at the top of the curve if you're going one way, and turn it around if you want to curve plane the other way, just so you're not murdering it. You need an almost scraper angle to get through that end grain, but this plane frog is not set at that angle, unfortunately. The blade is set at a too low of an angle to do that kind of cut. But it matches perfectly. It was actually really fun to use. I miss hand planing a lot. And it's definitely a big transformation. I was super happy with it. I miss doing hand planes so much. I do them off camera all the time, but I just miss doing it on camera for the channel. It's not the most exciting thing. It doesn't try to kill you in your sleep like most of what I do, but I do enjoy it nonetheless. I thank you all for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Later.